You're listening to Charting the Future, a podcast for independent pediatricians by PCC. For more information about our software and services, please visit www.pcc.com or visit us on social media.
All right, friends, welcome back. Today I have a guest I've been sort of saving for a year, Dr. Katrina Skinner. And I've been saving her because I knew that she and I could talk about so much. Katrina, how much of our lives have you and I dedicated to looking at each other in Zoom like this? Hours. She has
never get back.
That's the truth. And she has a great origin story, and she is doing some of the most important work in our space. I just was like, I got to save her for when I want to have the most impact. And it turns out the timing's pretty good. So I said, will you be gracious enough to get on the podcast? And she said, of course, which she did. So first of all, Dr. Katrina Skinner, welcome to Charting the Future. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you for having me.
Well, of course. First thing I ask is, do you remember when we met?
I remember a specific instance. I
knew it. So that was, I've been asking everyone this question, and sometimes I know, sometimes the other person knows, sometimes we both know, sometimes neither of us knows. And I was like, oh my gosh, when I ask her, she's going to remember this incident that she's going to tell in a moment, but there are two sides to every story. I just want the listeners to understand that. So let's hear your version of our first meeting.
Well, I mean, you snubbed me. That's the long and short answer.
I knew this was coming the whole time. As I recall, I was in the middle of a really intense consult with another practice. And this was at the Florida chapter show. And all of a sudden someone was like poking at me, like poking at my shoulder. And by the time I could break away politely from the person I was engaged with, I turned around and there was Katrina Skinner walking away. That was how we met. That's my version of the story. Is that your version of the story?
Good enough. Well, I mean, you did turn around and speak to me, but then you acted like you didn't know who I was and why was I interrupting you. So, yeah.
Okay. However, somehow that did not keep you from being nice to me later. That's when we talk more, because you and I have had a lot to talk about over the years. I would like to, I know you've told this story a lot, but I think it's still an inspiring one. I want the audience to hear, first of all, when did you decide to become a pediatrician?
I remember thinking about it as early as age 10, fourth grade on the playground. And I'm not going to say I didn't entertain other things. I was briefly attracted to the idea of being an architect. And then, even in medical school, I kind of liked delivering babies, but then I realized I wanted to go with the baby and not take care of the mother. Psychiatry was intriguing, but I knew that I didn't want to do that to that extent all day, every day. So
like, lo and behold,
psychiatry, but not quite the same.
It's interesting. I talked to some people, they're like, literally it was a rotation at the end of the game. And other people are like, oh, from the day I was born. So you were early in the game. You knew you were going to be a pediatrician.
Yeah. And I got my first job in pediatrics when I was 19. It was my first summer in college and I knew I needed a job. And so I just went to the local hospital. They had a small pediatric unit and I said, hey, will you hire me? And I told them what my eventual goal was. And so they hired me. I had no experience. They trained me. And that was such a foundational part of who I became and the care that I wanted to deliver. So definitely a formative experience.
Was there someone in particular who saw you, or was that just do you have a memory of someone really important back then?
Well, I think because it was such a small community hospital at the time, it had not been acquired by some bigger entity. It was very homey, it was very family oriented, very community oriented. And so in my job there as a nurse, a nurse's aide, I got exposed to so many physicians and surgeons, and they were very kind to let me shadow them in my off hours. So I got to, scrub in for surgeries. I got to shadow them in their offices. So it really was a great launch pad for me, not only to get hands-on experience caring for patients, but to also get to see how, what life is like when you're a physician. And not just in pediatrics. I got to hang out with the general surgeons, the plastic surgeons, the family docs. Everybody was very willing to let me tag along.
I don't think that could happen anymore. Am I wrong? Could that really happen?
I was going to say, it kind of reminds me of one of the things that I have further solidified as a mantra, but that's you have not because you ask not. And it really did require me to ask, right? Like it wasn't part of my job to go scrub in into the OR and observe, but I knew it would be a good experience. And so I just put the request out there, and it served me well.
So then you went to med school and opened your practice. So tell us about that, please.
Yeah, I suffered through all the adults in medical school to get to peds residency. And I always knew I wanted to practice in my hometown, which is the same place where I had worked in that hospital in college. And it was kind of always just assumed that I would join the one pediatric practice here. It was where I had been a patient as a kid. We had had multiple conversations over the years that, they would make a place for me whenever I was ready. So second year of residency, I kind of circled back to them to say, hey, we probably need to start looking at contracts and things like that. And they're like, oh, I'm so sorry. We actually don't have physical space for you. They had reached their capacity as far as their building. They couldn't expand anymore on their property. And so I was like, well, okay. But I'm still going to practice in this town. It really wasn't an option to me to go anywhere else. I couldn't even imagine myself being 15 minutes away. So, and there was only one pediatric practice. I live in a very booming and thriving community that continues to attract new families. And so I just said, I guess the other option is that I start my own practice. And so during my third year of residency, I couldn't find space that I could retrofit into a pediatric office. So I had to find vacant land, which wasn't on the market. I happened to cold call the owner and just ask if he would sell it to me for my office. I had to get a contractor, a lawyer, an accountant, a banker, an architect, a designer. All those people helped me when I was in my third year so that we started seeing patients, I think, 6 weeks after I graduated from residency.
So I know that is a crazy story. Like I know you know it because we don't meet many people in our work together who have a similar background. And my suspicion is at that point you must have been somewhat fearless, or was it that you just didn't know better? Like, which is it?
Yeah, I think it's the latter. I think I just didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know what I should have been worried about or scared of. And so I just jumped in head first.
Yeah, okay. I never asked you that question all these years. And I think back to weird things that I did when I was in my 20s where I'm like, I would never do that now. There are too many things that could go wrong. And if you don't know, it's amazing how often they go right. I'm curious what your opinion of that kind of practice birth is like in 2026. Like, do you think that's still possible? Do you think that's still probable? And do you think that's still desirable? No pressure with that question.
I think it's possible.
Yeah.
I think it would take the right person who has the right goals and motivations to do it. Is it possible? Yes. Is it probable? I think, again, circling back to what your end goal is, like, what do you want to get out of it? How do you want to show up in your career every day? That owning a practice definitely adds another layer to that.
I think the probable is entirely based on where and who. Mm-hmm. Where are you trying to do this and who you are. And then it's very, very, very possible. What about desirable? What are you hearing and feeling from the independent practices out there? And what are you hearing and feeling about the desire to remain independent?
Yeah, I think in my entire career, so I've been out of medical school for 20 years. I think this is the most challenging, right? I know, has the little gray hairs. I think this is the most challenging time, at least that I've witnessed, right? Because of all of the anti-science, anti-vaccine, anti-physician sentiment that's building out there. However, for certain people, I think entrepreneurship is always going to be important to them, when they value autonomy in their work. There are people like me who could never imagine being someone's employee, right? I am thankful that this is happening at this point in my career rather than at the beginning, because now I have all of my years of experience and just knowing that it's going to be okay. Like I have that sense at this point to help get me through. And also just that desire as an entrepreneur to continue to reinvent and to continue to look for ways to do better in your practice.
I think that's true. I wonder if the desire for autonomy among physicians in general is just higher than it is for other populations in general. I mean, I'm not a physician. I think your autonomy makes you a better doctor. How does that sound?
I mean, does it make you a better doctor? Which would also be kind of asking, if you don't have it, does it make you a less good physician?
Well, let's put it this way. What if you were not allowed to set your vaccine policy? How would that affect you as a physician?
Yeah, I mean, that would have a big impact. When I was in residency, one of my mentors said, you have to have one or two things to be really passionate about as a pediatrician, because you're going to be seeing a bunch of just checkups and, common cold, like just normal bread and butter stuff. So you need something to really be passionate about. And so I chose at that time vaccinations and breastfeeding. I said these things are going to be important in my practice. So yeah, I mean, if I was not able to set a vaccine policy that aligned with my ideals as a physician, then that would be a problem.
Yeah. You picked two good ones. Maybe the two most important ones. Good for you. All right. So years after you snubbed me at the Florida chapter meeting, to be honest, I don't even remember how this started. I don't remember like the order of events because it's all a blur, but you have done a lot more than just build an independent pediatric practice. You are the face and the voice and the producer and the director and the script writer and the actor for a couple of events. I'm over there I'm court jester. That's all I do. I'm over there. But you've put together a couple events that I think have had more profound impact on pediatricians than anything else I've done in my career. I'm being very vague because I want you to talk about them. So tell us about Women in Pediatrics and tell us about Pediatrics CEO.
Sure. Okay. Well, I will do that, but I'm going to kind of tie back to something we talked about in the beginning, and that was, not knowing what I didn't know when I first started in practice. And it didn't take long, before I realized, like, oh,
yeah, there's still a lot to
don't know some stuff, right? Like that insecurity of just practicing clinical medicine. And so I found that like after 5 to 7 years, I started to feel more confident. I wasn't worrying about the decisions that I made as much. And I think this is fairly common among physicians. You hit that 5 to 10 year mark and you're feeling very comfortable delivering clinical care. And so I had gotten to that point where clinical care it wasn't easy, but it came more naturally. And I found myself being a little bit bored. And so I really was focusing on the business side of things. How can I run my practice better? And so I was searching for knowledge, resources to help me be a better physician, business owner. And I just felt like looking in all the normal places, I was coming up empty-handed, right? So I was seeking information from just general business books or business podcasts or female entrepreneur spaces. And I thought, if I'm out here looking for this, other pediatricians are too. So why not have content that's geared directly to pediatricians? So that birthed two different things. One was Women in Pediatrics, which is an annual professional and development retreat for female pediatricians, where I think of it like luxury summer camp. We get fun things, but then you can also learn stuff, right? So we'll have sessions about women's health, well-being, mindset. We'll have some more tactical things like billing and coding in your practice. And then we have just some ridiculously fun things that don't require you to use your clinical brain at all. So, maybe you're making a bracelet or you're painting or you're going for, a bird watching walk or something like that. So that was the first thing that came out. And what I realized in doing that is the thing that we really needed. I mean, education and knowledge is great, but what we really needed was the connection and the community. And so being able to create a place for female pediatricians to find other people like them, right? So they didn't have to feel so alone. And so from that, I realized that there was an even more specific need that I felt like needed to be met. And that was providing kind of next level business management education for pediatricians. So, we always say, well, I wish I had gotten an MBA, or I wish I had studied business in school, or I didn't learn this in medical school. And so my goal was to create something that would fill that gap. And when I first started brainstorming it, I kind of thought of it as an MBA in a weekend. How can we give people the knowledge that they need to feel like they, had a business background?
Mm-hmm. And so how has it gone?
They're great. The pediatricians who come and join us are fantastic. So many connections have been made. So many resources have been identified. And I think also, just in addition to connection, we've given pediatricians some hope, helped them see that they're not stuck in whatever spot that they're in, that there is always a move that they can make.
When is your next event of this kind, by the way?
So we have a Pediatric CEO intensive coming up in November. It's November 6th through 8th in Denver. And that is 2 days of just jam-packed content. We're going to be having speakers on AI and how you can use different AI tools to streamline your practice and your life as the owner of the practice. We're going to have people talking about physician leader mindset. We have people talking about a topic we can never get enough of: how to hire, how to fire, how to reward our employees.
It's always,
always.
every time.
We've got someone talking about the numbers. I hear so many pediatricians say, I don't know how to read my numbers. I don't understand my numbers. I'm not good at math. And so we have somebody coming to really break that down and help our pediatricians feel more confident and comfortable in reading their numbers.
Well, are you and I going to be there?
And I think you might be giving a talk too. In case you didn't know, this is me officially telling you, you owe us a talk.
No, great. Having been at each of the CEO events, I think, I find a couple things. Number one, I think the most important thing that the event provides is unquestionably connections, intrapersonal conversations, the stuff that happens at the tables, the people you meet. That always ends up being the most important thing. But you can't get people to come to a conference. Come and hang out with your friends. People are be like, nah, I don't need to do that. But that is the most important thing. Secondly, though, and you said it, you referred to it, the mindset shift is really the next most important thing. You and I each individually at Pediatric CEO, doing our own consulting in different places, we have talked to people about the CEO mindset. You own a business. You own a multi-million-dollar business, and how you need to approach that differently, because this attitude that you bring and the philosophy that you bring into the exam room probably shouldn't be the philosophy that you bring to owning the business. I feel like some of the content that we have developed at Pediatric CEO is so evergreen. Just like you said, we can always talk about hiring and firing and HR stuff. We can always talk about the CEO brain. You and I have been very lucky because we've gotten to see some pediatricians totally blossom into people who they never thought they could be when they flip that switch and start running everything from the perspective of not just a pediatrician in an exam room, but a pediatrician who owns a business. And all of a sudden they say, oh, I can approach this problem this way. What would a CEO do? We're working with a group of people right now where someone comes into the group with a question, and Katrina and I don't have to say a thing because they're all like, you could do this, you could do this, you could do this, you could do this. All the answers are so spot on because they're now approaching their businesses like a business. And that to me is incredibly rewarding. I like that the most.
what you're talking about here because some people might not automatically know. But
please.
What Chip is referencing is the Pediatric CEO VIP Mastermind, and that's a 12-month group coaching program where we provide hot seat coaching. We have expert calls. We have accountability and open office hours. And then there's also a component of homework. And I love every time we say homework, people start freaking out.
It triggers them so deeply.
But really just giving the pediatricians in the group tools, resources, and just to say, okay, I have this thing I want to work on. I'm going to carve out time to sit down and do it, which again is operating like a CEO. And that program will be available for applications again in the fall. So if you're interested, you can join the wait list on our website.
But my favorites are still the people who send us pictures of their new mission statement in neon in the back of their front desk. Like when I see someone have their mission statement up on the wall and they're good and they're great and you have this good feeling when you see it. Those are the people I have the most fun with. That's when I feel like we actually helped a practice, and by extension, a few thousand kids. So that's you, by the way. That's your work.
Yeah, and I would say I was thinking about that this morning when I was in the shower.
Mm-hmm.
That's when a lot of good thoughts.
Shower thoughts, yeah.
That's right. And I was just kind of thinking, what would I say to pediatricians who maybe feel like they don't have the knowledge or the skill to be a business owner? And I would say exactly that. Like, you learned how to save people's lives.
Do a lumbar puncture.
You learned how to show people the path to their best, wellness and health. And to think that anything else would be more difficult than that, well, that's crazy.
I totally agree.
The human body, which is one of the most intricate and complicated things. So you've got this. You can own and run a business.
Pediatricians are the type of people who run towards an accident because they're not afraid. What I want is for the pediatricians to understand how important it is that they stay viable and vibrant and healthy and continue to take care of kids. We do not have enough pediatricians, period. There aren't enough. So here's what I'm going to ask. I'm going to ask you a couple questions. These are not rapid fire, but here you go. You ready?
Okay.
What do you think we are going to be talking about to CEO-minded pediatricians in 5 or 10 years? That's a tough question. I did not mean to throw you a big curveball, but 5 or 10 years from now, what do you think we're going to be talking to people about?
Well, I think a big topic is going to be recovering from the blow that we've suffered to just believing in science and vaccines and physicians.
Yep.
I think we're going to be talking about how we reshape our delivery of care and how we run our businesses in order to stay viable.
Okay.
We're going to talk more about really honing in and identifying the right patients and delivering the best care possible for those patients instead of necessarily being everybody's doctor and having all the patients.
Okay, you had similar answers to mine, or at least they line up. I think in 5 or 10 years, we're going to be talking about healthcare financing very differently because pediatrics is maybe the only specialty or one of the few specialties where we could throw health insurance out the window. And most families can, in fact, afford to pay a pediatrician cash, and the pediatrician is better for it, and the family's better for it. I would say right now, the average pediatrician generates about $30 or $40 of revenue per month per patient. It's really tiny, less than your cable bill. It's a fraction of your phone bill. And I think that the direct patient care model is going to be much more prevalent in 5 or 10 years. And then I think we have to figure out what to do with the remaining 50% of the kids in the United States who have Medicaid. That's where I think we're going to be spending a lot of our time. That's my guess. But your point that we're going to have to figure out how to not only recover from where we are as it relates to the science, but I want to go past where we were so that if we ever lose ground again, we don't find ourselves back to where we are now. We find ourselves, to a place that we're ahead of. And I hope we can do that without a vaccine preventable disease rolling through the United States and harming a bunch of people. But that's unfortunately, that might be what it takes. Okay, you answered a tough question really well. I haven't asked anyone that question before, but you ready? Related questions. Number one, what, as a pediatric practice owner, what worries you every day when you get up in the morning? What's keeping you awake at night?
I think my answer is probably the same as a lot of people's, and it's just people, right? It's navigating those complex human interactions, whether it's with patients in the exam room or it's with our support staff, with our employed clinicians, or with partners, which I don't have, but a lot of people listening do. And I think, to me, that's the most complex thing.
Okay. As a pediatric practice owner, what excites you? What do you look forward to? Like, what makes you jump out of bed in the morning besides getting on this podcast?
I think the thing that drives me is just knowing that I have the power to continue to find new and better ways to do things.
Oh, I like it. It's a very Katrina Skinner answer. All right. Last question. Though this one, but if you could go back to, 20, 30 years ago, let's say if you could go back to when you were in residency and give yourself advice, what advice would you give yourself?
Well, I'll tell you, I got the advice shortly after that. My first year of practice, it's the best advice.
This is Katrina's secret to life right here. Here we go.
Well, and I will say I am very grateful that I learned this fairly early in my career, but I was a year in. I had been completely solo on call, 24/7, 365, admitting all my own babies and inpatients, attending deliveries. Like, I was doing it all. And after a year, I was exhausted. And so I sought counsel from a mentor, and I was expecting to be given like some spreadsheet or some formula, or be told a report to run to know, like, do I need a clinician or whatever?
Yeah, that's what I would do,
The answer was, every year try to do more of what you love and less of what you don't. And I was like, okay, that's not what I was expecting, but let me think about that. And so the more I've thought about it, the more I realize that really is the answer. If we can be constantly working toward more of the things that bring us joy and letting go of those things that don't. And so, in my practice, that's looked like anything from hiring an after-hours nurse service to screen mommy calls, to rallying the community pediatricians in my area to stop doing inpatient and newborn, to, cutting back clinical time, hiring people to do things for me, whether that's a fractional CFO or a practice manager or a consultant, making sure that I am constantly moving toward a place of improvement and refinement.
When I think of how you have navigated your career, the way I just describe it in my head is that you are the most deliberate physician I've ever worked with. You choose to do what you're going to do as much as possible. And that's a superpower. That's why I wanted everyone to hear it. That's a superpower.
Well, and I would say, and I've been like this since I was a teenager, I guess. It's as far back as I can remember doing things like this. But, we all know the value of doing strategic planning and, forecasting in our businesses, right? And so I do that for all of my businesses. But I think it's also important to do it personally. Whenever you have goals and things that you want to achieve, if you can just have that strategic planning session with yourself. And so I do it quarterly. And then I also do like a bigger every 3-year set of goals. And so every day I'm looking at that. I know what I'm trying to achieve in the next 3 years, in the next 90 days, and then this week. I set myself tasks for each of my life buckets each week that will directly lead me to whatever those 90-day goals, which then directly lead me to those 3-year goals.
All right. Do you have any final words for our listeners? Anything you'd like to tell them? You're going to hopefully see them in Denver in November.
That's right.
First week.
Yes, I would love to see everyone there. I would say this, in addition to doing more of what you love and less of what you don't, I think the other most important thing for pediatrician CEOs to remember is that you should spend your time doing what only you could do, right? So we need to hire as much help as we can afford to take care of all of those things that don't require our specific skill and leadership as the CEO and visionary of our businesses. And so that could be anything from, running your payroll to doing your billing to even seeing some patients, right? Like, we are not unique in our ability to deliver that, but we are unique in our ability to see the big picture, set the vision, solve the big problems, maintain the big relationships in our businesses. And so anything we can do to carve out more time for that, I think, is valuable.
That was like an A+ summary. I might move that to the front of the podcast, and the podcast is over in 3 minutes. What you just said there is what you and I both together and individually have tried to get people to see my whole career. Stop doing things that make you feel busy. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And
thank you for having me.
I really do hope, well, my pleasure. I really do hope, Katrina, I see you in November in Denver. And when she announces the next Women in Pediatrics, I hope at least about half of you go to that. And if you have any questions, where can someone see the work you do? Where's the best place for them to go?
So probably the easiest place is the Pediatric CEO or Women in Peds websites. So pediatric-ceo.com or womeninpeds.com. And then if they want to connect with me personally, there's katrinaskinner.com.
Okay, groovy. And I've never said this before, but those will be in the show notes. Okay, I've never said that. Now I sound like a real podcaster. Well, thank you very much, and we will talk soon.
Thank you. Sounds great.
Thank you for listening. More information can be found in our show notes. Production and editing by Chip Hart, Ali Squires, and Chris Forleo. Music by Challenger C. I'm Mark Herney.